All right. Good morning, Etowah County. Another candidate interview, getting rolling here with a wonderful, beautiful Friday morning with Mr. Craig Lipscomb. Guys, we're going to do a lot of the same conversation that we've been having with all of these candidates, talking through some of these core issues. As we've been doing, we're really focusing on the business aspects, the business growth. How do we raise the quality of life in our community? How do we raise household incomes? There's a lot of different ways to do that and a lot of aspects that all have to work together. So we're going to step through a lot of that kind of stuff and get Craig's take on it. I would encourage you. He's answered the questions like so many that we've got. So head over to advancedetowah.com. Check out Election 22. You can go to who's running. We've got the candidate profiles in there, links to websites and social and all that kind of stuff, trying to make it easy for you guys to see who's running and understand, I guess, the game of politics in Etowah County. So welcome, Craig. How are you this morning?
I'm well. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good. I'm going to get a 4-minute timer started, and we'll let some folks jump on. So please, as always, hit that like and share button, and let's get a few more folks on. And for those of you that have been doing this with me for a while, if you'd let me know that the sound is good, that you can hear me, that would be awesome, and that you can hear Craig. So, yeah, I feel like we're finally in spring.
Yep.
Beautiful outside.
I planted some wildflowers probably about 2 weeks ago because I've got a little strip in the backyard.
Nice.
That I just like to have cut flowers, or I like to, cut flowers for the wife and put them in the kitchen. So it's probably about 2 feet wide and maybe about 20 or so feet long. And I've put all the seeds out there, covered with a little plastic. Everything's starting to pop up. It's definitely springtime.
All right. Well, it's nice to see. Feels like the world kind of coming alive. That's the way some of our anglers have put it. A lot of fishermen getting out on the water. So obviously a place near and dear to my heart. So guys, again, somebody, I'm going to go over here and double check my audio and make sure that we're good. All right. And it sounds like we are. So that is awesome. Are we getting comments that I'm just not seeing? Gotta make sure all the equipment's working good here. All right, cool. I think we're good. We'll give it a few more minutes. I know 9:00 on a Friday morning. I'm always curious when I do these lives, whether it's this stuff or whether it's fishing content or just talking about boats or anything else. What are people doing at 9:00 on a Thursday morning or a Friday morning that enabled them to jump on and pay attention?
A lot of people are getting to work those 410s now, so those Fridays are off.
Yeah, and I would not shock me today. I think if I could do that, I probably would not be sitting in the house watching Facebook. Yeah, so it is it's just an interesting. We've found there's a lot of guys that you work from home, and I think so many people will take something like this and they throw it on and they put it in the background, or they throw it on another screen and they listen and they kind of do the work. I know as fascinating as you are, it is.
Well, it's like Fox News. It's very interesting, but oftentimes it's just turned on and background noise.
Yep. So, I guess as we kind of kill the last minute here, y'all are just coming out of session. Mm-hmm. Anything to kind of report on? Does it feel like everything's kind of out of COVID and the processes down there are kind of back to full speed ahead?
Well, as you know, when we were in the midst of COVID, we had all of the requirements in place. We had to leave seats open in between everyone on the House floor. So that meant that a lot of us were going up into the gallery which in turn meant that we couldn't bring, the public into the state house. It was a very odd year, not, first of all, me being up in the gallery and not on the house floor, and also not having general public, because it's the people's house, right?
Right.
Where we normally see lots of people, and there was no people. And so that was very strange.
Interesting. Well, sounds, it's good to know that we're kind of getting back to some business as usual, at least feeling that way. You mentioned as we were kind of getting on here, you said 700 something odd. You know the round number of how many bills y'all went through?
I think we had more than normal this year. Generally, the average is we see 700 or 800 bills. We normally pass 100 or 200. This was even a more unusual year in that it was an election year, and usually there's even fewer bills being passed. People are wanting to wrap things up and get out of there, but it was just as busy as it's ever been.
Well, sounds like you did a lot of reading over the last few months.
Lots of reading. I think I've got, by osmosis, I've become an attorney.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
No, that is absolutely not true. Absolutely not true.
As we sit here at Knowles and Sullivan, I think there's some attorneys that would pucker to hear.
I think I'm getting served right now.
All right. Well, guys, let's get rolling here. Again, Craig Lipscomb running for the seat that you currently hold. So you are the incumbent running for a re-election in the House of Representatives. This would be your second term.
That's correct. Yeah.
So for full disclosure, as we get on with all this, Craig is one of the two. Between him and Tim Ramsey are one of the two politicians that I've really actually known before all this rendering plant stuff. We've been going to church together for a long time. Craig plays a mean bass. So I just want to, before anybody, if I'm being accused of being soft or anything like that, I just want to make sure everybody understands that but the thing in this community is it's pretty hard not to know a lot of folks. So
there's one degree of separation of everyone.
Yeah. So, first and foremost, appreciate your time coming in here and sitting down and talking. And just appreciate your willingness to serve, your willingness to subject yourself. And as I've joked with all the guys running, for the Montgomery seats, you're willing to subject yourself even more, to being down there in that fun. So, thank you so much for your willingness, to do that. And I hope everybody, gets that it's not, I know I've heard multiple times people saying, well, it's a full-time, part-time job. So thank you.
A lot of people refer to it as like a hybrid job. It's neither full-time nor part-time, but somewhere in between. We spend a third of the year down there, and then of course when we're back home, we're still working.
Right.
So it's a lot of time away. The real commendation should go to my family, my wife and children, for allowing me to go down there and spend that much time serving the people.
Well, okay, so let's jump in, guys. As I've said with all of these. We're going to step through the foundation concepts. We're going to talk through a lot of the stuff. Again, Craig has answered a lot of questions. So, most of this stuff is not going to be any, new epiphanies or anything like that. But I like to try and get, we're going to try and talk as much as we can in 45 minutes to an hour. And cover as many issues. Obviously, each one of these issues and each thing we discuss, we could turn into a 3-hour, 4-hour, 5-hour discussion. So I encourage you, look him up, look Craig up. If you've got, if you want to go deeper, if you want to know more, particularly if you're in his district, and you've got really district specific issues. This whole conversation that we're having is really couched under how is Etowah together, working as a whole? How are all of our representatives, all of our elected officials working to get the people's desires headed in the right direction. While not all desires are going to align, I mean, that's part of democracy, and that's the way the process works. But I think what we've seen through this last year is that there's a lot of people that would agree there's a lot of potential or untapped potential in Etowah County, and we need to really do a good assessment as to what may be slowing us down, what can we do to build a community that is an exciting place for our kids to live in the future. So, again, I don't want to make light of or dismiss any other of the numerous issues that we have in Etowah County. It's there's just too many for us to address in the time and resources that we have. So, what we're really focusing on is going to be how does everything go together to increase that quality of life, raise the household incomes, because certainly out of the rendering plant, jobs, industrial recruitment, all of that kind of stuff was a very big discussion. And the reality is that we don't need just jobs. We need better paying, better quality jobs, things that will actually increase the quality of life for us in the community. So, guys, if you do have a question, I feel free to drop it in there, and we'll see if we can work it in. And if not, and if it's something specific, I know we had a question the other day. If it's something specific, I'll save it for the end, and we'll try to get in there and wrap it up. So, let's start with you. Give us a quick, short bio version. Outside of the political world, who is Craig Lipscomb? And give us a little context on the family, the business, all that kind of stuff.
Sure. Well, just to get back to the early 90s and even the late 80s, I went to Coosa Christian, graduated from there, decided to pursue a degree in architecture. That was kind of my passion. My father was always in construction. I feel as if my mother was always destined to be an interior designer, even though she was not. But that was just kind of where I was. And so leaving Coosa, I went to Gadsden State.
Okay.
Stayed there for a couple of years playing with a show band on scholarship and getting some core out of the way. Went to Auburn.
War Eagle.
And I actually did my thesis in urban planning in Birmingham, downtown.
Okay.
And so I graduated with a degree in architecture and practiced with a local firm for a number of years. Started my own practice around 10.
Okay.
And so for, I guess, in the past dozen years or so, I've had my own practice here in town.
Okay.
I've got a lovely wife named Angela. I got a kid named Clark who's about to graduate from high school.
Nice.
The other one's Carly. She's just started. Dog named Clover. She's mentally insane. But needless to say, that and a couple of chickens, and we're having a good time at the Lipscomb household.
Gotcha. All right. Well, so you are a guy that has been around the community pretty much your entire life. Mm-hmm. Aside from, I guess, a little stint down in Auburn. So, good to know. And I, as a transplant guy, when I meet folks that, I guess the best way to say it is it helps me understand a lot more of the history of things. I've got a history degree, and I'm a firm believer that, you really need to go look at the history to figure out, to really understand the problems that you're facing today. And then, of course, that enables you to create the solutions to move forward. You got to have the context of everything to try and understand what's going on. So, all right. Well, again, we don't want to have an hour-long rendering plant conversation, and I'm going to go ahead and preface this with, you've come on a number of times through the last year and a half with the rendering plant issue and talk with us. We've seen you address this, very publicly multiple times. So I'd encourage you to get out there and go look at what Craig has done. There's tons of video out there, plenty of documentation, but just the short version of kind of what did you do with the rendering plant, and what are your thoughts on that whole thing?
Well, you'll hear a lot of people say, I did this or I did that starting day one. That's usually not true. But in this particular case, when I tell you I was there day one, the day we found out about this, the day was the same day I was notified, was the same day that I jumped on this thing. And of course, numerous people can collaborate that. I don't need to do so myself here. But, we most everyone knows
Right.
the history of the rendering plant, and I guess the best thing that I can say is I did absolutely everything I possibly could, and I feel like at the end of the day we were successful in accomplishing what we were trying to do. And what more can you ask other than someone try their best?
Yep. And I think obviously discussions just for as we've said, it definitely seems like we have prevailed as a community, and it's incredibly unlikely. But I just want to remind everybody the conversation that the rendering plant issue is a symptom of an underlying systematic problem, and that's why we're here. That's why we're still talking. That's why we're still doing this kind of stuff, because it's a there's some things that we need to take a look at as a community and move forward. So again, I think it's not hard to go see what Craig has been involved in. One other thing that I kind of failed to mention in the intro. So May 24th is primaries. Craig's going to be there. He's got a real tough competition.
Yeah. I need everybody to support me on this one.
So, don't go right in Daffy Duck or, Bugs Bunny. But Craig is one that is really running unopposed for your seat. But I bring up May 24th in the primaries because those that are, those that do have competition, that is going to be the election for all of those seats. Whoever makes it through the primaries, they'll be the only names on the ballot come the actual election time. So please keep May 24th on your calendar. Don't miss out on the opportunity to exercise your leadership in the community as a voter, and speak loudly as to who you want to whether it's county commission or send people down to Montgomery school, the state board of education. There's that's a big one. So,
and it's more important than people know. A lot of people, especially when you get past those local races and you get into some of those more regional and statewide races, like the Board of Education and things of that nature, people don't pay that much attention, but that's very important. If you're going to complain about the status of the educational system, you need to pay very close attention to who you're sending there to represent you.
Yep. And I think, and I, again, not to deviate too much from the flow of these conversations, but, I think to that systematic issue of why are things the way they are in our community, and looking at that, I think the rendering plant was, a catalyst. It was kind of a whole bunch of things coming together to really highlight some of the issues that we've got, and quite honestly, scared enough of us that weren't paying enough attention to start paying attention. So, the big call to action right now is don't drop the pack. Don't, just because, there was a lot of work done by thousands in this community to work up against this issue that we've dealt with this last year. But ultimately, the leadership of the community's got to be us, and we've got to pay enough attention. And to your point, if you're concerned about things, you need to go get a little smart on it.
Mm-hmm. It only takes a minute.
Yeah. And I will say, one of the things as a web guy, as a marketing guy, it's harder than one might think if you're a soccer mom or a baseball dad, or you're working 60, 70 hours a week. If you're building a business, I get it. I mean, I think that's an issue throughout our country. But I think I'm encouraged to see kind of an awakening of a lot of folks going, oh, wait a second, to what you said, the school board doesn't run itself.
Right.
Like, I mean, you need to kind of pay attention. And so, all right, so let's, and so that kind of leads us into the first issue that we've talked about, leadership. As a core, foundation. I say it we don't need elected officials. We need leaders. And then those leaders we need to elect into positions that they can go exercise that leadership, and represent us. So to that point, obviously we've already given you an at bat. So what do you feel like qualifies you? Why should people, continue to trust your leadership and trust you to represent us down in Montgomery?
Well, I think first and foremost, the proof is in the pudding. You can see my record. You can see what I've done. I've been a fiscal conservative. Anybody and everybody who ranks those things has ranked me among the top of my class. Those people who know me outside of politics know that I'm a local businessman. I like to think that my reputation precedes me. And, sometimes when you're running for office, you have to convince people of who you are. It's good to know that people knew who I was before I ran. And, thankfully, I was elected and given the opportunity to show people what I was capable of. Oftentimes, you wonder what am I good at? What can I accomplish? Well, I think simply being an architect taught me a lot of things. You're having to organize people. You're having to coordinate sizable projects. All of that requires a certain degree of a certain skill set that's necessary to serve people. And so I was kind of getting my education all along the way. I just didn't know it.
Gotcha. Well, that's a good way to look at it. And, I think, the discussions that you hear today, which I think is a tough discussion. You go back and forth between people that have years and years and years of political experience, and you don't want to discount that, but at the same time, it's also not a negative for a guy that has no political experience but tons of other experiences, and then they step in the political arena. And so I want to encourage people, don't just on both sides. I've seen people say, if they're an incumbent, vote them out. Hold on. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. And then the flip side of that is, hey, I've got all this. I've been doing this for 30 years.
Don't discount them just because they don't have that political experience.
Right. So the point is, do the research. Hey, if somebody's been involved in politics for 30 years, that's great. They have a bunch of knowledge, but you need to go look at what have they done. Because certainly one of the questions that comes to my mind is, well, am I happy with where you've gotten us in those 35 years versus looking at a guy that has minimal experience, going, well, is he going to be able to navigate things? Because I'm sure you've got plenty of stories of things that you've experienced the last few years.
Oh yeah,
down in Montgomery, that was one of those. I didn't
realize
I was going to have to.
That learning curve was about like that. It wasn't gradual.
Well, and of course, you got thrown in with COVID and a very unprecedented issue to deal with. So, but I think that's just some stuff to consider as we look at people, and it all goes back to, I think if you just try to blanket statement one way or the other, you're doing us as a community a disservice and not going and really what are people about, what are their true qualities, and what are their true leadership qualifications, what is their real attitude, what have they done, what's their record, all that kind of good stuff. So let's jump into government structure. We use as an example that has really set us up and looking at the local area from the very beginning with Etowah County. We've talked about, you've got so many municipalities. I, as a military guy, sit there and say, I don't know how you'd ever begin to achieve a military campaign in such a small geographic area with that many generals. It becomes a very, very difficult, so that, and then internally, you've got things like the airport authority, that it's a government institution with zero requirement, for at least a minimum number of people with aviation experience to run an airport. Same thing with the IDA, as, hey, yeah, it's basically an independent company that answers to no one, that gets, $500,000, $1 million plus a year, that they don't have to tell us what they do with, and those issues with the government structure. And we've talked a lot about, as you really start educating yourself on a lot of these boards and who's on these boards. And again, I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater with some of the issues that we recognize. There's plenty of boards with good people on them. Mm-hmm.
And I encourage people to get on boards.
Yeah.
It is of the utmost importance that our boards are as diverse as possible. We need teachers, we need doctors, we need janitors, we need everybody from different components of life to be on these boards to help serve.
So let's go, so let's take that. What's your kind of your view, as a guy that's representing a big chunk of the community, at the state level, and looking at Etowah County, what are the good, bads, and others, that we can do? Are we in a good spot? Do we need to make some changes? What are some ideas? How do you look at all that stuff?
You know how when you're watching the State of the Union from the president, it always starts out, we're in the greatest state that we've ever been in before. I really feel like that may be the case here. I can't think of a time in my lifespan when, and let me preface this by saying, let's put the steel plant in Goodyear aside from this conversation. It's tough that we're missing those industries, and we all know why we're missing those industries. But aside from that, really, Etowah County is as full of life as it's ever been, good, bad, or otherwise. It just is.
Right.
Are we gaining population? No. Are we losing population? No. We're staying right there in the middle, which is not necessarily good. Okay, we need to be growing, but it's difficult when you've got a community like Etowah. When I say Gadsden, I'm talking about greater. Right, greater, because Etowah is the smallest county in the state, right?
Right.
So when you say you're from Gadsden, you're from anywhere in Etowah, right? But when you're from a county like Etowah, which is literally halfway between the two largest cities in the state, Birmingham and Huntsville, that puts you in a distinct disadvantage, because you're getting pulled from two different directions. Job opportunities are always stronger in those areas, but let's preface that by saying, but so is the cost of living.
Right.
Okay. Right. I've looked at it, and many people have confirmed that Gadsden and Etowah has, and really the surrounding areas as well, has got one of the greatest cost of living ratios in the whole United States. The wages may not be top tier,
right,
but the cost to live here balances that out very nicely.
Yeah, I just actually had an old Navy buddy that's he lives out in Washington State. He said basically, the kind of the standard homes that you see around here, they're they're paying $950,000
yeah.
for out there. So
You're
you
talking
got
about
to put it all in perspective.
let's just say you've got that typical 15 or 1800 square foot home, and you just paid maybe, I'm just speculating, maybe $200,000 for it. Well, that same home, on the West Coast is $1 million. It's ridiculous.
Yep. So what's what's your sense of the way our government entities are working, collaborating, not collaborating, anything from the House perspective of things you'd like to see, in your next term.
Well,
to make,
we made great strides over the past 4 years of. So the thing is, Etowah County is extremely territorial.
right.
We all know this. Why it's that way, I don't know. I'm sure it goes way back before we were born. Why does one community rival another community, and why do they not collaborate? Because that's what we're going to have to do if we want to survive. And we started to do that. 4 years ago, it was so palatable that palpable is the correct term.
Gotcha.
That everything, they were beginning to start to work together, and everything was looking good. And then the doggone rendering plant happened, and it fractured everything, right? So what we've got to do now is help to super glue everything back together again,
Right.
and get back to the direction we were headed in 4 years ago, and get all of these communities getting together and saying, listen, we're brothers and sisters. We're not supposed to be in direct conflict with each other, because what's good for you is good for me. You and I were talking about this earlier. If you've got two different things that you need to be at, and you have to travel between those two things, and they may be in different cities, but both cities are going to benefit because you are hitting all of that commerce in between.
Yep. Yep.
And so if they will just simply collaborate, it's kind of like with gas stations too. Why do you see 4 gas stations on an intersection? Wouldn't you think that's too much competition? No, it makes them actually grow when they've got that competition. So that's what we've got to start focusing on, is just getting everybody linking together, marching in one direction, and trying to accomplish a goal that's good for everyone.
All right. Well, let's jump into infrastructure as we talk about goals, and obviously you're looking at it from the state level, and what can be done. Infrastructure is one of the core aspects of the rendering plant. Certainly, do we have system, particularly a sewer system, that can handle this stuff, roadways, all of that kind of stuff. What and as an architect, I'm sure you bring some unique insights and experience into the discussion about infrastructure and the infrastructure of the future.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on where we are, infrastructure wise, and being, I guess I'd say fixing what needs to be fixed, but also preparing for, because if we're, right now, if you're looking 5 years out, you're not looking far enough ahead when you start talking about things like infrastructure.
Right.
So, what are your thoughts on us as a community?
Well, all infrastructure is aging. We're perpetually our infrastructure is just like technology. Over time, it just becomes obsolete. It just decays, and we have to replenish it in some form or fashion. And especially in some of these older towns, their sanitary sewers may be made out of clay pipe. I mean, literally made out of clay. Squish it kind of clay.
Which may mean that pipe basically no longer exists. And
that's right. That's right. And so that happens a lot. What we did do is we took some of the COVID relief funding, a sizable chunk of it, and we devoted it to a lot of infrastructure needs across the state. Those communities statewide, which needed it the most, we're talking about imminent failure,
right?
Needed it the most, especially when it was relating to water and sewer.
Right.
We got them immediate money to fix that stuff, because you just cannot have civilization without that kind of infrastructure. So they're getting that resolved. But I think one of the more important and more relatable infrastructure needs that we have very legitimately addressed is we have brought a lot of that same money and other money to the table to address immediate broadband needs across the state. A lot of us in Etowah County, with the exception of a few little pockets, and I know where you are. I do know exactly where you are. Most everyone takes it for granted that they've got fast internet.
Right.
But especially if you get into the Black Belt of Alabama, you get on the west side of Alabama and various other very rural parts. It's just not there. You're just a significant lack of broadband. Now, a lot of that is already being corrected. We got money granted last go around. We got it granted this go around, and so we're putting it to good use. So we're addressing all manners of infrastructure, including even your common road work. I mean, you've seen all of the road work that's happened on Rainbow Drive, and we all saw that.
Hey, you can't complain. I say, I say that with
a double-edged sword, isn't it?
It's got to be done.
Yeah.
And they actually, I'll say, I felt like they got it done fairly quick. And
it's painful when you're driving on that milled up asphalt. And it's, you hate that. I hate it. But you have to understand that, they're contractors. Right. They've got other jobs going on, and they're going to do what suits the needs of their working schedule.
So I guess unique to having a sitting representative here, this latest announcement or recent announcement of the rail and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk a little bit about what is that about? And getting to that mega site.
Right. So one of the big components of Rebuild Alabama was getting that rail infrastructure, that corridor in place. And that's a big deal to Etowah County, because another significant component of Rebuild Alabama was dredging the Mobile Bay and broadening that thing up so we can get more expedient export of our commerce out of the Mobile Harbor, our Mobile Bay. So the interesting thing is that rail line that is going straight to the Gulf is going straight through Etowah County. And it just so happens to be going straight through the mega site that the county's been working on for well over a decade.
Nice.
And so everything's just lining up right there.
All right.
Couple that with the fact that they've just been granted, some cash to get some of their water and sewer needs and all that stuff put in place. Hey, we're right there. We're probably, if not the number one, we are number two. But I think we're probably in the catbird seat here. We're probably the number one, mega site within the state. So, because we are such a good, strong conservative state, and we've put forth so much effort through the legislative process to create incentive for business to come to Alabama. I mean, think when you and I were kids, would you ever thought we'd have Mercedes and Honda and Hyundai and all of these different huge manufacturers? Of course not. We would have never dreamed that. But we've got all that because we've put all of these programs in place to draw them here. So we're going to continue. That's not stopping. We're going to continue to be drawing in these huge industrial organizations. Now, does that mean we're going to get a car plant over at the meg site? Probably not. Okay. I'm just being, that's probably the cold, hard truth. It's not out of the question, but most likely you're going to find something just a notch below that. Okay. More importantly, somebody who needs that rail.
Gotcha. They're
exporting goods.
Right.
Yep. That's who you're going to see landing there. And that's going to have spin-off economic, the trickle-down economics theory. They're going to have tiered suppliers. They're going to have people providing things to them. And those people are going to be located, if not in the same industrial park, but in other parts of Etowah County.
Right.
And so that's just going to bring up more and more business opportunities for a lot of people. And that just, that helps make communities grow.
All right. Well, as we kind of talk about that, and the countywide discussion of what could come to support that mega site, the master plan concept, the old adage, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. I know that there are those that have. I'm getting the sense that we've got more and more people that are talking to each other with some coordinated efforts. You mentioned, you go back a few years, and that was your impression of what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
What's your thoughts on a more formalized master plan development, particularly that involves more, like what we're seeing out of Rainbow City and Southside, bringing in more input from citizens, which the flip side of that is citizens have got to engage.
Right.
It's only as good as, the products is only as good as the input. So what are your thoughts on an Etowah County master plan? Is it possible? How do we go about doing that? And again, obviously there's only so much you can do as a house representative, but what are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's going to require a municipal directed collaborative effort. I know that was a mouthful, but basically what that means is I don't mind being the person who stands up there and coordinates everything, but it's going to really take all of these cities working together and the cities working with the county. It's going to have to be a group effort. Even the city of Gadsden, once upon a time, they had a city planner. This was, I think his last name was Ball, and he was there over 25 years ago, and they never replaced him when he left to go work in Birmingham as their city planner. So the last master plan or city master plan that they had is still 25 years old, and I'm sure that everybody else has a similar situation. I think actually Rainbow City has been very proactive about it, as is Southside and Glencoe. I think they are all actively working to work towards that thing. But the problem is they are all somewhat individualized, and they probably need to be.
Right.
Some of that needs to be kind of held close to your vest as a municipality, but there also needs to be some degree of collaboration to where they can work on, hey, what is the 50-foot view master plan? How do we all work together to accomplish our own goals? And so we're just going to have to get all these people in one room and get some pizza and slap them once or twice and say, this is how this is going to have to work.
Well, and I think, ultimately that starts with the people that live in the communities voicing their desires to see that. And I think, again, out of the rendering plan, it kind of brought a lot of folks, a lot of discussion, made a lot of people aware of a lot of things that we haven't necessarily been paying attention to. Not that there weren't plenty of people that kind of knew it already. But if you don't have some deliberate plan, to your point, if you're Rainbow City's got to have an idea of what they want to be, and Southside's got to have an idea of what they want to be, but we've also got to all recognize collectively that, most people don't live, work, and live their life just in, because
they're going to have this plan, and some of it is going to be very self-specific, but a portion thereof should be shared with others.
Right.
And say, hey, this is what we want to do. How can you help us and how can we help you? And then you can start creating this community master plan. But that's down the road. It will take time. We've got to let these people do what they're doing currently and then take their respective informations and squish it all together.
I'll throw this out there. Heather New said the current City of Gadsden master plan turned 45 this year.
Oh, it's worse than I thought.
From 1977. So
that's rough.
Yeah, it's even 25 years old is still too old. This device didn't exist, 25 years ago. So the dynamic, the change, and the I would say the rapidness. Is that a word? Rapidness of change has exponentially increased, which means that we've got to stay even faster at looking at what our plans are.
I was driving my daughter Carly home from softball the other day, and it just kind of popped into my head. I said, Carly, technology was at lightning speed in the late 90s and early 2000s. I said, you got to understand, we went from a cassette tape to a CD, and from a VCR to a DVD, and from those to digital, all within such a short little time frame. It was remarkable, and that just
and we could, again, a whole other conversation on this, but I think one of the cool things about our kids' generation, when you can gripe about millennials, but the one thing that millennials and younger kids, their existence is going to be change. So, I think about my grandparents that very minimal change in their lifespan. And then when cell phones came along and, I'm a kid struggling with, well, why can't my grandmother understand how to do this? Well, because for 70 years there wasn't anything, but now, now we're getting generations that, literally every year, there's constant change, which I think it's going to help you adapt. So, our kids, when they're 70, are going to be able to adapt to the new things a lot quicker than maybe we will be. And certainly better than our parents and grandparents. So I don't know, for what that's worth. There's some thoughts. So real quick, let's talk first responders. Again, to the discussion of we're all of a sudden a lot of people paying attention. Not something that really had much to do with the rendering plant, other than some pieces of discussion of, hey, if you're going to build more stuff out at the airport, right now the city of Gadsden, who would be responsible for providing fire support out there, is regularly having to shut down. And I certainly caveat with, there's not a whole lot that you can do at the house level to fix the issues in Gadsden. But, if we look at countywide and your perspectives and understanding, obviously, we've also had the discussion about, that's an important piece that businesses look at. And so at the house level, as you deal with, some of this stuff and have discussions about, business opportunities and understanding, how to go to the state level and sell us as a community, that's something that you've got to keep in mind. What are your thoughts on the current state of the first responders that we have, the manpower need that we have?
It's not just statewide; it's nationwide. We're in a very unusual time right now, where people, especially on the other side of the aisle, have become disenfranchised with our men and women in blue, with many of our first responders. They've got some sort of political agenda against them that's certainly unwarranted. We've got a situation where we've got more jobs available than we ever have at better pay than we ever have, and we can't get people to even apply for jobs. We've got a problem in this nation right now, not just in the county or in the state, but nationwide. We've got a serious problem with people, being normal, and I don't understand what has happened. I feel like wokeism has crushed us.
Okay,
and we're going to have to find a way to crawl out of this pit and get back to normalcy.
Okay, so I guess you're taking that to kind of the culture, money aside, just do you want to be a part of something that's putting yourself in a
dependency on government has become a tough thing to overcome recently.
Okay, all right. Well, then we'll see. I definitely would agree that we're living through some interesting times, and along the same lines, and I think it relates to the first responders issue. I think you bring up a good point. As a military guy, I can only mildly put myself in the shoes of some of the things that folks are facing. I will say, I think fortunately in our local community, we're more moderate, less divided than you look at the national scale.
That's true, but yet I have constant communication with all these business owners, and you've seen the help wanted signs everywhere.
Yep.
And we know that there's people able to fill those jobs, and yet they just simply won't apply. I don't understand that, especially when you can't even find a burger joint that's hiring people for less than $15 an hour right now.
Well, uh, not to take a dig on the city of Gadsden, but I know they posted a job for $9 an hour, which I think was a summer gig. But I think that's still even going to be tough when kids have got opportunities. Because I mean, you're
Sure.
right. Restaurants need those good high school jobs, those good beginner jobs. But
Yeah,
cost
my
of
high
living is
school
gonna,
job was, I think, $4.25. And a lot of people
back in my day.
a lot of people are laughing at that, thinking mine was $1.50. But hey,
Yes. Well, so I just want to finish off that thought with to all of that, on both sides from what I've seen is also having productive conversation on solving the problems, and it's that seems to be, and again, that's a whole other episode and a whole other conversation, a road that we can go down, and that's one of the reasons that I'm doing this and what we've tried to do, why I want to stay as local and local issue oriented as we can, because and we go back to the infrastructure stuff. Look, if we've got sewage overflowing into my neighbors, even if they're a staunch Democrat and I'm a staunch Republican, at the end of the day, I don't want their house filled up with sewage.
No.
That ain't right.
No.
And that's not a problem that's a problem that we can solve right here together as neighbors. Right. Our kids go to school together. We're playing on the same, sports fields. We're driving on the same roads. We got the same potholes destroying our suspension.
Far less than there used to be, though.
Yeah. Yep. Well played. But so that I think is one of the reasons that I'm encouraged with what is going on in Etowah County is we seem to have, we're having some discussion, trying to figure our way through some of that stuff. But I mean, I agree with you wholeheartedly. We've got a very tough time right now as a country. Yeah, I mean, I think our first responders and have been stuck right in the middle, and particularly makes me thankful for the community that I do live in. And I mentioned my buddy from Washington State, and we spent a few years living out there. That's how I knew him. We flew together in a squadron, and he's from Washington and lived out there. And he was actually down here doing a FEMA school in Anniston, and just kind of, I don't know, I guess he felt a kind of a sense of relief of like, wow, your community's not as crazy as mine, so, but, anywho's, all right. So let's move on to education. We talk about, the railway, coming through, development of job attracted. Obviously there's a lot of aspects that we can talk through with education, but certainly, a big piece of that is workforce development. And building an education system that is attractive to whether it's somebody that wants to move in here and build a business, or whether it's an existing business that wants to move here and move employees in. So what are your thoughts on our current education system in the county?
Well, statewide, we've put a tremendous amount of resources into our education system, more so than we've ever done in the past, by a long shot. We've increased salaries for teachers, and we dropped a significant bond issue to facilitate construction of new educational facilities, because frankly the population is growing and the schools we have just simply cannot accommodate. So we're having to be mindful of that. Meanwhile, we're not going backwards.
Right.
We're being very conservative about things. We're saving money, even though we're spending more money. Yes, we're still saving more money at the same time than we ever have before, and we're paying off debt. And those are extremely good things. Now, how does that parlay into what's happening educationally locally, especially as it relates to workforce development? It means that we've now had the opportunity to fund a significant new structure that's going to be constructed at Gadsden State that's going to be nothing but workforce development.
Okay.
And so, and that's going to be necessary. And they're doing that. They're doing pretty much the exact same model at many of the 2-year schools across the state. Not all of them necessarily, but they're trying to balance it out, because what they're doing is they're hitting regions. They know that the workforce development up in Huntsville is going to be different from the one that's needed in Gadsden. It's going to be different from the one that's needed at Wallace State. If I don't know if they're getting one, but if they did, they'd have different needs. But frankly, we don't. I think when a lot of people think workforce development, they're thinking we're training kids to work at Honda. And to some extent, that may be true. But it's so much bigger and broader than that. Right. We're going to be teaching kids how to drive bulldozers and how to hammer nails and how to wire, electrical components there is so much construction related workforce development that needs to occur. It's ridiculous. We've got fewer masons than we've ever had. You want to make some money right now? I mean, you want to make a lot of money right now? Start a masonry company.
Sling bricks, huh?
Yeah, sling bricks, do some concrete. It's all the way across the board. There's not an electrician I've spoken to. There's not a mechanical person I've spoken to who has not told me we are dramatically understaffed right now. We'd hire a dozen people if we could put our hands on them. And that's just the way it is. And these are not poor paying jobs either.
Right.
These are very good paying jobs.
Yeah.
And
well, I mean, the aviation world is near and dear to my heart. When I was managing a maintenance facility out there, international jets at the airport, when you're willing, and this was 6 years ago, you're willing to start a guy out. If you can just pick up a wrench, we'll get you in at $18-19 an hour and train you from there, and then you're paying a whole lot more to licensed aviation mechanics. Right. And I mean there's an endless, let's just say, I mean there's some discussion about pilot shortages, but it's not all that hard to find people that want to fly planes. It's a whole lot harder to find people that know how to fix planes, and and that's true.
I would love to
translates to everything.
Yeah, I would love to know that we've got a program coming up at Gadsden State that is going to help facilitate the education of children who want to learn to be mechanics, whether it be a diesel mechanic or whether it be an aeronautical mechanic or whatever the case may be. I don't know that there are any plans to currently do that. I'm concerned that there may not be a lot of planning at all at this stage. Okay. We're going to have to be vocal and tell Gadsden State what we want. Yep. Tell them what they need to know, because they may not comprehend what they need to be doing. I don't put that much faith in everyone. You know what I mean?
Gotcha. Well, I mean, they, it's interesting. I was watching, obviously Elon Musk is in the news a lot right now. And I don't know if anybody's got time. I'm kind of a technology geek, so I pay attention to some of that kind of stuff. But you got Tesla. I mean, he's saying a working robot that could be in homes, in 2 to 5 years.
I've seen those movies. I don't want that thing.
Well, and it's funny. He mentioned, and he's been a very big, and again, this is a whole fun discussion, but he's been a very big proponent of we've got to be smart with AI. And he mentioned in his talk about, we've got to make sure we've got the protocols so we don't have any of that Terminator stuff. Yeah.
And there was an X-Files episode that was rough too.
Yeah. So, but the reality is, autonomous driving cars. I mean, we're already seeing, I mean, the nature of how we do, and I'm sure in the factory settings, which again, Musk, they just opened up, I believe it's basically the largest manufacturing facility, or at least vehicle manufacturing facility in Texas. 50,000 employees in Austin.
It's crazy.
Building Teslas. When a guy like that's talking about this kind of stuff, a lot of people think it's so futuristic that, we're years and years and decades away. And the reality is, I mean, we've already got cars on the road that really can drive themselves. Yeah. They're just, the law hasn't caught up with allowing them to do some of that stuff. And,
well, that's true. And I've actually seen proposed law that that would allow not only passenger vehicles but even like delivery and 18-wheelers to drive autonomously. Now that's a whole different monster, but the reality of the matter is that the tech is here.
Yep.
It is it exists right now. I've seen it.
And we've still got to have people that are able to work on a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
And, that's going to take
And
even
a
more
lot
training.
And a lot of people to drive that train because, I mean, you can't just let an AI do everything. Somebody's got to keep an eyeball on it. And you need to be a qualified somebody to keep an eyeball on it.
Yep. Again, that would be a whole other fun conversation. I don't know if everybody else would enjoy it or not, but I certainly would. That's a fun thing to sit around and talk about. All right, so let's wrap all this up. We've touched on business development, business growth. Again, from Advanced Etowah's standpoint, we're kind of looking at it as, the rendering plant was really couched under, industrial development, growth, job growth, all that kind of stuff. You talk with business owners around here, either folks that have moved out to Rainbow City, or people that just don't want to build a business here because of the business culture. Specifically, I know you talk back to some of your trades, plumbers and HVAC guys that you've got to have 17 different business licenses to work for 3 days worth of work around here, and it's just not conducive necessarily. Like there's a lot of building business is already hard,
right?
How much harder are we making it? How much more attractive? So all of this kind of stuff coming together. What are your thoughts on where we need to go to make it easier or make it more attractive, I should say, for people to build business from within, to grow what's here. And then, because obviously as an architect, you get big companies that come in, and especially if they're willing to hire local architects, there's more opportunity for everybody in all of that. So what are your thoughts on the, kind of the business environment in Etowah County and where we need to go?
Well, I think a couple of things need to happen, especially for young businesses. And really even for young minority businesses in particular, that whenever someone is starting out something new, you have difficulty getting credit. You have difficulty finding a place to establish your business. And so I think what we have to do is we have to, and we're already addressing this. And when I say we, not so much we as other people, but people are already addressing creating an incubator space, maybe even several, but getting a place where people can have terraced rent, start low, increase as is comfortable, so that at least you've got a place to call home. You've got an address you can get mail at. You've got a place where you can have a conference with somebody if you want to. And then we've got, and I think we have done a pretty good job of this statewide, is make it to where it is, and we need to be careful, but we need to make it as easy as possible for people to get financing to do things of that sort, while being smart about things. We don't want, and we can't expect our credit unions and our banks to make poor investments in people and businesses, but they do need to provide as much opportunity to them as they can. And a lot of times what that means is at least just being someone who can help them facilitate a small business loan, or get some kind of a federal or state assistance. Just have something in the community that people can go to, something that is a beacon for small businesses. We've got some of the answers for you, if not all of the answers for you. And all you have to do at this point is have a good business model and a strong work ethic.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, I think I'm going to bring up one comment, just going right back around to the school development and job force or workforce. Lance Corey said there's an aviation mechanics program at the Albertville Airport that is directed by the state. Interesting.
Okay. I didn't know that.
We've definitely, Lance and others have brought up, the Albertville Airport. Just again, that's the kind of the world that I'm comfortable in, but the Albertville Airport's doing a lot of stuff to grow a lot of opportunity.
I don't understand why we can't be having a small commuter flight from here to Atlanta on a daily basis.
Well, I mean, that's so passenger moving is a tough conversation to have.
That's why I asked you the question.
Yeah,
because I don't know.
And that's a tough dynamic, and a lot of things have got to line up. You know, one of the most extreme examples that would in a community like this, and I go back to Washington State, SeaTac Airport, you know, in the heart of Seattle. You've got a lot of these communities. You know, you get out on the San Juan Islands, and a lot of these communities that have developed that, you know, it's a 2.5 hour drive by you know, because you can't go straight shot to get to the airport, and so they actually there's small commuter plane infrastructure that has been built that's affordable because they can run enough. Because the demand is there, because for $50, I'm sure it's gone up by now, but yeah, it's worth my time because it only takes me 35 minutes to get in the airport now instead of 2.5 to 3 hours, you know, and then back that up with I've got to be at the airport early and all that kind of stuff. We've got a different geographic layout here. You know, the advantage you have there is that as the crow flies, it's 20 miles to that airplane. Versus, you know, 150, 200 miles for a car. So there's a lot that you can get into that. And just the hub and spoke, some of the FAA regulations on, you know, what you can and can't do with regularly scheduled. You know, I think, as I understand it, a lot of those things that would service an airport like ours are set up with, you know, you're basically getting, they're subsidized by the local community.
I guess you'd have to have like TSA involvement. And
I mean, there's a lot of that kind of stuff. To me, when I look at that airport, and this is just me speaking, the lower hanging fruit, and a lot like what Lance has brought up with Albertville. You know, you've got BAE out there. You know, you talk about how close we are to Huntsville. I mean, the military industrial complex out there, aerospace development. You know, through the rendering plant, we talked about, you know, if Southwest Airlines or Delta Airlines were to want to have additional hangar space in Birmingham, you know, how much would that cost? Do they have room down there? You know, and that was one of the things that I thought was even crazy. I mean, just absolutely insane that a community would consider selling off 85 acres of your airport because that, I mean, I think if you went to Delta and said, hey, I can give you 85 acres, because flying an airplane in for long-term maintenance into our airport versus flying into Birmingham, it makes no difference, you know, in the aviation scheme of things. Yeah. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity. I would think there's a lot of opportunity there. That's probably that low-hanging fruit before you go down the road of trying to get commuter traffic, because the economics of that get a lot more complicated.
You know, that's a convenience thing. And I mention that because I know that a lot of my constituents out there are probably thinking, hey, why can't we just kick it on over to Atlanta? And I wanted you to answer that for me. I'm sorry, we're flipping roles here for a moment. No. But I think really the greater question is, and that's not necessarily something I'd want you to answer now, but something for us to consider down the road is, how does the airport best serve Etowah County economically?
Yes.
And when we figure out what exactly it is that airport can do to help us have increased job growth and economic development opportunity, then that's what we've got to laser focus in on and just drive it home.
Yep. And I think, you know, the first step, in the most simple terms that I would put it, is got to have a community that doesn't think about that airport as that's where a handful of rich guys keep their airplanes. Because quite honestly, what has developed out there is that a lot of the rich guys that have airplanes in our community keep them in places like Albertville because they treat them better.
And because apparently they have a mechanic, I guess.
Yes. And so, you know, understanding the, you know, regional airport importance, you know, most corporations, even large law firms, they don't have private airplanes or, you know, buy into that, you know, live in that world simply to show off that they have money. I mean, it's a business. It's just dollars and cents.
Right.
You know, what's the cost of your time and how much quicker is it to move you? So there's a lot of those kind of aspects.
Sometimes buying a plane is kind of like buying a car for a business. You don't need it, but you can make a logical consideration for purchasing it, because it might actually benefit you on taxes, or it may help you develop additional clientele. There's a lot of reasons for having those sort of things. It's not always just to have fun.
And I mean, so you bring up, and again, I don't want to belabor this conversation, although I enjoy it. So if y'all hang around and listen, great. Let's say you've got, as our geography changes and develops, Charleston, South Carolina, tons of growth there. Where you've got import and export of goods, or related things. Charlotte, North Carolina, and I'm not just from a business standpoint and how I need to move people around. I've got an engineer, I've got, whatever. And particularly in the world where geographic boundaries, like in the architecture world, I'm sure the internet has dramatically opened up doors for business opportunities that you never would have, so could you get a good, a good project, a good client in Charleston, South Carolina? Well, what does it look like for you to get to Charleston in a convenient way? And there's no, okay, well, I can drive, I could, hop on a plane at Gadsden and be in Charleston. And I know we've got a couple of guys out there that kind of have that business model and own their own airplanes, and they don't own their own airplanes because they're rich guys. They own their own airplanes and they use it as part of their business.
Vehicle.
Right. That's how they get to, so that they don't spend, most of the month on the road. They can hop in the airplane, fly to wherever.
Literally saves them money.
There's a ton of, there's a ton of aspects of that. And I think the demand on aviation, as we talk about quadcopter delivery and, all of this kind of stuff that's not, it's not science fiction anymore. I mean, it's stuff that's occurring. And, so we're sitting, that thing is a jewel.
And I know you've been putting together your rocket suit that you're going to be debuting out there.
Yes. Yeah. No. I don't know. We'll see
whole
where
Iron Man
things.
thing you're going to be doing.
Yeah. I don't know that's. We could get into a lot of the physics of how all that stuff works, but I'm sure somebody will figure it out one day. But no, aviation, obviously fun conversation. And that's the whole point of all of this that we need to do as a community. And while I know, and I'm comfortable really digging deep into the aviation world, and as I look at what I've experienced and seen out there, I have to assume that you've got a lot of the same mentalities and same issues, in other aspects of whether it's boards, are we having a good enough collective conversation? Are we advertising enough to enough people to get input? And, do we have the right people sitting in the room as we develop some of these concepts and plans? And that's what I think we need to have more of, and I put a lot of that on the shoulders of us as voters. Certainly there have been plenty that have been knee deep in the politics around here, that have been good meaning and been trying, and now all of a sudden there's hopefully a lot more people that go, ooh, I need to jump in there. Certainly we've got a lot more people that understand more about the airport, and I hope that that leads to a conversation. That airport is not, it doesn't just impact Gadsden. And it's not even just about Rainbow City and Etowah. That airport is, you talk about commuter traffic. Let's say we did get commuter traffic. Yep. Well, now you got, everybody in Fort Payne, basically all the way up to splitting the difference between Chattanooga, yep. And even Trussville and all that kind of stuff.
Even if someone had a more convenient airport, they may find that this one is actually going to save them time because of maybe a traffic volume situation.
Right. Absolutely. So yeah, but those are the conversations that I think we need to be having as a community, and all of that really boils down to, you've got to have some vision, and some discussion about that. And I don't feel like we've had have had a predominance of that. I feel like the prevailing conversation has been, oh my goodness, Goodyear's gone. Well, as a transplant, ever since I've been aware of Gadsden for 23, 24 years now, I'm sure my wife will tell me when I get home exactly how many, but it's always been my impression that Goodyear's been halfway out the door. Like we've had decades now to figure this stuff out, and then I feel like we're all of a sudden in a reactionary. We certainly have people that have been thinking about it and have been trying to weigh in and make changes, but we just haven't had it at enough of the scale, and there has been a lack of leadership and a lack of some folks that even get it and understand it. Like how many people are really sitting around here getting smart on what is Elon Musk doing with robots? You can blow that off, or you can say that the dude's built self-driving electric cars and rockets that land themselves, and he's going to go to Mars, So if he says he's building a robot that could come help me with house chores and mow my yard, and you better. At this point, I'm starting to bank on.
If you've got a car that can navigate the United States, you can probably get a robot that can navigate your house.
So, and that's what we need to have that conversation, because the future is changing dramatically, as we've talked about, and we need to be thinking about those plans, and then deciding as a community what do we want to be, and we won't always agree. And in fact, that's the beauty of democracy. So
it'd be terribly boring if we did.
Right. But we've got to get back to, we've got to have the ability to have a conversation. We've got to have the ability to have a conversation with our elected leaders, with our citizens. So, and I'm encouraged. I think that's what is happening in Etowah County. And
I'm excited.
And I'm excited as well for the future. At least I'm hopeful and optimistic. And I appreciate you guys. If you're still hanging in with us, thanks for listening to these. If you've got your thoughts, again, jump on the comments. Let's have the conversations. As we move through this election season, I know a lot of you guys are getting out to First Fridays and all that kind of stuff, and I don't know what other things you're going to get out and attend and go shake hands but with that said, how can people get in touch with you? Where can they find you on the interwebs?
I guess the logical place to keep up with just kind of what's going. And I'm not a huge poster. Keep in mind, I'm not a horn tooter. I don't. That's just not my style. But if there's something important that I need to tell everybody, if there's something interesting, funny, or just critical to their health, safety, or welfare, I'll be posting that sort of stuff. You can find that on. I think it's elect Craig Lipscomb for House District 30 or something like that.
Gotcha.
And
if it helps, I've got it all linked up on our candidate profile. So,
or you can go to Advanced Etowah and travel from there.
Yeah. Find the who's running, and find all that information, and again, try to make it easy as possible for people to find and figure out what the heck's going on around here and who's who. So, Craig, I appreciate you coming in. I appreciate your time. Guys, Michael, again,
before you go, let me just tell you how much I appreciate you and the whole team and what you've done for our community and everything. You do this on your own time just because you love our community, and I appreciate that a whole lot.
Well, thank you. It has been an interesting experience. So, but I'm encouraged, and it all comes down to the folks out in the community that have jumped in. I'm just the crazy nut that's willing to sit in front of a microphone and talk about some things and call myself out where I've been lacking, and hopefully that encourages others to follow suit and pay attention. That's really what we need. Just got to pay attention. So, Craig, thanks for coming in.
My pleasure.
I will. We'll get all this linked up, and you can find out more information about him. Obviously, he's going into this as the only name on the ballot. So, again, maybe you want to write in Daffy Duck. I don't know, but
I'll be so disappointed if they do.
Yes, yeah. I don't think that's.
But I won't be surprised because you've told them to.
No, don't vote for Daffy Duck. But no, Craig, look forward to what you do in your next term. Appreciate what you have done this last year, and again, a crazy time. I mean, jumping into COVID as a new politician, and then rolling into this rendering plant thing, which was a fairly unprecedented evolution in the community. You've navigated that well, and I appreciate that, and look forward to seeing and talking and being a part of where you and the other representatives lead us at the state level. And guys, again, I've known Craig for a number of years now. Don't hesitate to reach out and share your opinion. Obviously, do it in an appropriate and professional way. I'm sure you probably get a little hate mail every now and again, but hopefully you get some words of encouragement. So guys, again, head over to advancedetowah.com, go to election 22. You can find who's running for office and dig through all of that and learn more about these guys. Let me know what other things, what other links, what are you having trouble finding? What's going on with all the House bills and all that kind of stuff. So, but let Craig know what you're concerned about, because I know he's willing to listen.
That's what we do.
All right. Well, guys, enjoy your Friday. Hopefully it's a beautiful weather. Hopefully this weekend won't be too nasty with storms. But, man, spring is here. I'm excited. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to be ready for election season to be over, but that isn't going to actually happen in pretty much until November. It is what it is, but it's worth the effort. It's worth the fight for our community, and I appreciate you guys. So y'all have a great afternoon. We will talk to y'all later.